When we have dysfunction, all that means is we've taken this goodness that's inside of us and put all this stuff on top of it. Doesn't change whether the goodness is there or not. And so we just have to see through the muck and see the goodness that's there. This philosophy just says we're looking to make sure that people are feeling valued. Even if we don't like the idea, we are valuing them. And so what others may dismiss like that, a stupid idea, they don't know what they're talking about. It's like, whoa, stop. Wait a minute. Remember, we're going to value all solutions, and it can come from anywhere.
Welcome to the Strategic Momentum Podcast, the show where we share tips, stories, and advice from progressive leaders on what it takes to break through that business inertia and propel you and your business forward. I'm your host, Connie Steele. In the last episode, we learned the secrets of meeting facilitation from Michael Wilkinson, the founder and managing director of Leadership Strategies, the #1 facilitation training company. I recommend listening to that episode first if you haven't yet. Today, Michael returns to explore specific use cases of his facilitation techniques, especially in the virtual, multi-generational work environment. He talks about how to facilitate collaboration when technologies, hierarchies, and varying workplace considerations like age and skill come into play. Because in the end, coming together to drive initiatives forward takes understanding group dynamics, using differences as strengths, and valuing solutions no matter who they come from.
More and more meetings are becoming virtual. We teach a class called Facilitating Virtual Meetings. And what is interesting is it's the same 10 principles. You prepare, you start, you focus, you do information gathering, you manage dysfunction. The principles are the same. And how you apply the strategies, though, are different. And let me just speak to a few differences. So we know when we're in a group face-to-face meeting, we need engagement every 20 to 30 minutes. Every 20 to 30 minutes, we plan an engaging activity. Well, when it's virtual, we cut that in half. It's every 10 to 15 minutes that you do that, where the issue with virtual, of course, is oftentimes you can't see the other person. And so they may be multitasking, doing all kinds of things. Oftentimes they can't see you don't have necessarily a place where people are seeing what's being written, what's being typed, or whatever that might be. And so, first of all, we always recommend that if you're having a virtual meeting, the video is excellent because it allows better engagement. Even more important than the video, however, is for everyone to see the same screen in order for that as notes are being taken. It's almost like the flip chart thing where everyone can see what's being created because it creates focus. So it's pretty essential, even more than video, that people see what's being done because that allows better effectiveness, better focus as people are doing the work. A third technique that we use, even more so in virtual meetings, is the round robin. People have the misconception that, hey, if you call on people randomly, you'll get people paying attention more. It's just the opposite. It's when you systematically are every 10 to 15 minutes doing a round robin so that everybody knows they're going to have to respond, they pay much closer attention because it's happening every time. One thing we do for variety, we do change up the type of round robins we use, and we always change up the starting point. So that should change every time so that the people at the end, I'm just a ditto what that other person said, and so on. And so that's a nice technique. And then the thing I wanted to, please go for it.
Oh, no. So I would say that the preparation for a virtual meeting is incredibly crucial to know that people need to look at the same visual on the screen to ensure that all the folks who are participants in the meeting, particularly if you have potentially a larger size meeting versus a one-on-one, that all those folks have a voice and that they're engaged.
Very much so. And what's funny about the preparation, Connie, I mean, it's just surprising. People think that preparing for a virtual meeting takes less time.
I would assume it takes more time.
Actually, it takes more time. If you're preparing correctly, it takes more time because you actually are thinking about the virtual details. how are we going to do this differently given that it's virtual? So you still have to do all the things you would do for a face-to-face meeting, but then you have to add the virtual details. What are you going to do because it's virtual? Another piece I want to mention virtual that people will find helpful. If there are generally more than 6 or 8 people in the meeting, you will certainly want to have a moderator, someone who's responsible for just the technical issues. If you imagine, if you're trying to start a meeting and one person's going, hey, I can't get in. And the meeting leader has to go off and deal with that person while everyone's waiting for the meeting to start. Having someone responsible for that. And I've facilitated some pretty interesting meetings. I'd say the most interesting on the virtual side. So you can imagine this. I had a client in the UK who we had done strategy work for, a 4-day strategy session, went over and did that. And we were ready to do the annual update. And it was going to be a 1-day session. They called and said, hey, we'd love for you to come out on this date. And I shared with them, I can do that. But if you think about it, you're going to have to pay a day for me to get out there. I'm going to be there with you. And you have to pay for a day for me to get back. And then a day of preparation. You're going to pay for 4 days when I'm only going to be there one. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Why don't we go ahead and run that meeting virtually? And they said, oh, okay, we'll go ahead and do that. Connie, what was I thinking? The meeting started at 9:00 in the UK. That meant 4:00 a.m. Atlanta time. So here I was getting up at 3:00 for a 4:00 all day meeting. Yes, in my basement. But what we did, which was great. So everyone else was in the room but me. I was the only virtual participant and I was the facilitator. And so we actually had a webcam in front of the room so I could see the whole room. And there were 24 execs at 4 tables. So there was a webcam at each of the tables so I could see the people at the table. And it was great. I'd make comments. I would say, Tom, would you start flirting with Sarah over there? And let's stay focused. And people would laugh, right? Because they were just having a side conversation because I could see the room. In the same way, when they did flip chart work, there were flip charts at every table. They would turn the cam toward that flip chart so I could see the flip chart and I could comment on what they were doing. At the end of it, the CEO said, no, Michael, when they said the session was going to be virtual, I said, there's no way this is going to work. But oh my God, it was like you were in the room. And sure enough, it was like I was in the room. It can really work if you plan it and plan it well.
Running virtual meetings may seem like the easy solution when your team is spread out across the country or even the world. But in reality, running an effective virtual meeting takes more preparation and strategy than an in-person one. You have to set up a technical environment that ensures, 1, every person can see the same materials on the screen in order to get aligned and engaged. 2, have a voice. And 3, can stay and should stay on task, while still applying the facilitation techniques that you'd use for an in-person meeting. And when you have the right parameters in place, you increase efficiency by reducing travel time, meaning you can move faster toward achieving your initiatives. Next, Michael shares another example of effective facilitation when it comes to dealing with senior executives. So let's talk about another situation, since you have been just discussing senior executives.
Yes.
How do you deal with the challenge of seniority in a meeting and managing that need for people to agree with the leader?
We do sessions with executives. I do have the meeting in advance with the leader, and we have an agreement. We talk about the 3 before me, and I share with the executive, there's perhaps times where you are oversharing. And we really need to hear from your people. If that ever happens, you'll hear me say, you know what? Let's hear from more people on this. Let's use that as our code word, just as a reminder to say, let me go back to 3 before me as a way of doing that. And so we often also do, this is powerful because people often have trouble speaking to power. We use sub-teams frequently. And the simple way to do this is, let's just say, and I'll make it up, that the leader has a vision of where the company should go. And so we actually have the leader share that vision. And then we'll go around the room let's just go around in total and just say, what do we like most about what we've just heard? And if someone said something you like, just say ditto number 3, and I'll put a check mark next to it, or ditto number 7. So we'll go around the room. I said, well, yeah, now we'd like to talk about not what's wrong with it, Connie. That's not the way to go, of course. How could we improve on this vision? What suggestions do we have? And instead of going around the room, let's go into small teams of 4 and I'd like to get a team leader for each of the teams. Great. Now let's hear back what the team said. Now notice, because it was in small teams, they're not going against it's what the team said, not what any one person said. So it makes it so much easier to speak. And it's not what we're saying what's wrong with it. We're saying what would make it better, how to improve it. So speaking the positive language, allowing people to work in small teams to come up with them, and having one person speak for the team, it really provides a little cover for people and gets them the courage to really speak truth to power.
And then, so in that situation where you have that senior leader who's running the meeting and you have, the various employees who are part of it, that's one situation. But let's deal with a situation where you have someone who's facilitating discussion, but the participant is one of the executives who happens to come into the room, and everyone turns their attention to the most senior person, and they are supposed to be the participant, but what happens is the power gets drawn to them.
Connie, this sounds like you're speaking from past history, perhaps. Yeah.
I think everybody has probably had a situation that has been similar.
That's great. And so I'm going to go from 2 perspectives. One, let's go from the perspective of the insightful leader. We're the insightful leader first, and then we'll go from the perspective of the not so insightful leader, but the insightful meeting participant. So let's say the insightful leader sees this happening to him or her, and let's say her in this case. And so she says, you know what? I really want to hear from everyone else, because we need to make sure that your ideas get on the table. And I'll share my view, but would you all allow me to do that last? I want to hear from you all. Great. The leader's insightful, recognizes that she has disempowered the group by being in the room and that people are behaving in a way that's not helpful. She steps in. Let's say she doesn't. And we call it guerrilla facilitation. You being a meeting participant goes, you know what? It would be great to hear from Jane on this and get her views. But I know for me, I'm going to feel a little uncomfortable speaking if she speaks first, speaking against it. Is it okay if we hear from everyone else first and then have Jane speak last? Is that okay with everybody? We call it guerrilla facilitation, where you're not the meeting leader, and the key to guerrilla facilitation is you ask a question. You never make a statement. You never say, hey, I think we should do it this way, because now people have to fight you if they disagree with you. Instead, you ask it as a question. You know what? Here's my concern. Is it okay if? And we'll let the group decide. Is it okay if? So we really recommend guerrilla facilitation when you see a meeting going dysfunctional and you're aware of it and no one else seems to be. And if you think about it, questions are extremely empowering, right? By you having the ability at any time to ask a question, you are empowering yourself to change the direction of the group. So questions are a very empowering tool. In the same way, as you said, and let's go back, executives walk in the room. There's no question they have the power, not you. They have the power, not you. They walk into the room, they have the power. We say you have at most 15 minutes to get them to turn their power over to you as the meeting leader. When that transfer of power doesn't happen, it is truly a bad thing. The nice ones, they'll just ignore you, right? They'll have their side conversations. They'll play on their phones and so on and so forth, because what you're doing is not important to them. Those are the nice ones. Connie, the not so nice ones, they're going to fight you. This agenda doesn't make any sense. We don't have the right people here. Oh man, why are we wasting time on this? Because they haven't turned their power over to you. So we run hundreds of meetings every year. And what I was mentioning before, about the 4 things to do at the beginning of the meeting: inform, excite, empower, involve. Those 4 steps are the best we know because it allows them to turn their power over to you. They say, oh, okay, what she's doing is important. Okay, I get it. I understand what's going to happen. Well, this is going to make a difference. Go ahead, make it. So when you inform, excite, empower, involve right at the beginning of the meeting, they tend to turn their power over to you. If they end up taking it back by trying to control the room, that's where you step in. So, let's have a quick round robin. We'll start here and go around the room. And let's have of course, you're going to go away, or you're going to start with the person to the left of the executive and keep going to the left. So the executive speaks last, right? Let's go around the room and get input on. So you're back to empowering the groups and empowering the group's opinion. And then we have certain ground rules, like in one of the ones we use. And again, if it's an executive session, we share it in the beginning with the executive before the meeting to get permission. But we would say, as an example, titles are left outside the door. That's one of our ground rules. Now, when we use it, we explain it this way. Everybody knows that Connie is president of the corporation. And we all know it. But she just agreed that her title's left outside the door. So when she's in this room, she is one member with one vote. So Connie can't say, when I was meeting with the board last week, because Connie, you weren't meeting with the board last week. The CEO was, and the CEO's outside the door. The best you can say, Connie, is, you know what? I was talking with someone who was meeting with the board last week, and that person told me, and everyone's going to laugh, but they're going to recognize that what you're saying is you are affirming that your title's left outside the door. So we use that as a ground rule and give people tools for here's how to use that so that we're not in this room. You're one person, one vote, along with the rest of the team.
When dealing with the hierarchy of power and influence in a meeting, what's most important is to directly address the imbalance. Whether it's by asking people to leave their titles outside the room or encouraging the most senior person to agree to let everyone else speak first, it's about leveling the playing field so that one person's opinions don't dominate the final outcome of the meeting. As Michael says, you have to stick to the 4 principles: inform, excite, empower, and involve to make sure everyone had a voice. But what happens when you're dealing with a multi-generational workforce on top of a rigid hierarchical structure? In today's age, you have multiple generations with different styles of working, with different expectations in terms of their contribution, their point of view, which can create creative friction.
Yes.
How do you deal with that?
And let's talk about, as always, is conscious prevention, early detection, clean resolution. So consciously preventing dysfunction by taking steps in advance. And so let's talk about the dysfunction around the multi-generational. What tends to happen, if you take both views, where the young people often are saying, well, these folks are stuck in the mud, doing things the same way. They're not allowing us to do the things that we know will make a difference. They lack creativity. And then let's go to the older generation, and what they're saying about the younger generation is, boy, you know what? And they think they know everything. They think they're just young. They don't have experience. They want to move so fast. They just don't get it. That's not the way things work around here. And so recognizing the issue, which says now we may have trouble valuing each other's opinions, valuing each other's what we have to offer, because both groups have a lot to offer to one another. In fact, it's a match made in heaven if they would respect each other and what the gifts that they bring.
So this is a level 2 disagreement.
There you go. And so how do we help them really value each other's gifts? And so we actually remember conscious prevention, early detection, clean resolution. So our conscious prevention mode is, and let's go with the first side, the folks who believe that these guys, they're stuck in the mud and so on and so on. We would just have a ground rule. It just says, insights before decisions. Insights before decisions. And that ground rule just says, before we make a decision, let's learn about what we've done in the past what we've learned from it, and then we make decisions. So that will help the older folks feel more comfortable that, you know what, they're just not going off from making decisions without really knowing about, hey, insights first. Let's ask, what can we learn from the past before we make decisions? In the same way, we could have a ground rule. Solutions come from anywhere. And that just means anyone. The janitor may have a solution here. It can come from anywhere because we're looking for the solution, not who said it. So solutions come from anywhere. And so in our small groups, we would purposely make sure that we have our small groups being the intergenerational, because you know what's going to happen. People sit with the people they like. And so we actually would arrange the teams so that the teams are multi-generational, so that they are actually working together on building on each other's strengths. Just as tools or ways of thinking about the work.
To summarize, you're ensuring a very positive dialogue that's grounded on a really common perspective that everybody can contribute to, such that then it's really from a place of, this universal knowledge to then solve the right problem for, versus it being more opinion-based.
Very much so. Well, brilliantly said, Connie. So it really is. And what I would add to that is one of the things that happens in personal dynamics is things break down when people are saying, I don't value you. When people feel they're not being valued, things break down very, very quickly. And so, as I said, when we have dysfunction, all that means is we've taken this goodness that's inside of us and put all this stuff on top of it. Doesn't change whether the goodness is there or not. And so we just have to see through the muck and see the goodness that's there. This philosophy just says we're looking to make sure that people are feeling valued. Even if we don't like the idea, we are valuing them. And so what others may dismiss like that, a stupid idea, they don't know what they're talking about. It's like, whoa, stop. Wait a minute. Remember, we're going to value all solutions. And so and it can come from anywhere. Let's make sure we understand it, right? Solve level 1. And then let's say, what do we like about it and how to make it better? Addressing level 2. And so we are now improving on the solution. So we get creative abrasion. And notice the words, what do we like about it? How do we make it better? Those words speak to creative abrasion. Let's create better solutions from where we start.
I'm also assuming that this approach really would be the same in terms of dealing with cross-functional teams, because you have cross-functional teams in which each of them provide a different value. Their roles are different.
Yes.
Each one may perceive that their role has a higher order of importance relative to the other, yet it's necessary for them to come together in order to build, create, plan that product at the end.
Absolutely. And as long as we are valuing those perspectives, even though they're different from ours, we're going to value the perspective and figure out what solutions can we come to that actually cover the key values from all perspectives. Because the marketing people understand things, the technology people understand things, the field people understand things. So we want to make sure we create solutions that absolutely build on the best of the best.
So this ability to effectively facilitate such that you get efficient collaboration, to me, is at the end a way to build the right relationships between people.
Isn't that interesting? People who go through our course, really, they walk away going frequently. They'll say, you know what? I thought I was coming to a facilitation course. This course is about life, isn't it? You say, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. Yes, we recognize that. I mean, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this stuff, Connie, is we know this is my ministry. It's how we change the world by giving people the skills and the strategies to think differently and then apply them in ways that help for just better solutions and, of course, better relationships. We call it achieving amazing results through groups.
I know that has been one of really your key mantras in talking to you prior, that, early on in your career, it was all about delivering impact, and that you've always been very planned. You've been a planner for much of your life. And so being able to take that planning mindset coupled with wanting to deliver as much impact as possible to everyone that you touch ultimately led you to where you are today.
It really has. And I had not made that connection. But if you go way back to the day, to that first shower experience where it was all about, I'm not interested in making a lot of money, and certainly not interested in making a lot of money for someone else. I really do want to have an impact on people's lives in a positive way. And so it's a wonderful ministry.
As with any other type of meeting, running a meeting involving multi-generational players or cross-functional players takes plenty of planning. It's about predicting the interactivity of the group to create the path for navigating the group dynamics. In this case, it's all about looking past egos and accepting that solutions can come from anywhere. The trick is to stay positive, focusing on solutions rather than pointing out the problems, and playing to each other's strengths rather than competing for top rank. As long as everyone has the opportunity to share and understand each other's perspectives, the whole of the group will be greater than the sum of its parts. And this is why facilitation is about more than running better meetings. It's about helping people open their minds and work better together, in work and in life. Lastly, Michael shares advice for anyone looking to develop and improve their facilitation skills.
So, what advice would you give somebody who is learning facilitation and has learned all your principles, but is nervous about applying them? And so, what advice would you give that individual who is just starting out, I should say?
Yes, and as you think about someone who is just starting out, and they've gone through what we call our fundamental training, the 4-day, the effective facilitator course. And so they know that they love what they've learned. They want to apply it, look forward to applying it. We explain, and we do this on exit on the last day of the class. The last thing we talk about is, one, there's a lot of stuff here, and you can get really excited and get overwhelmed by the volume. But you only get good not by knowing, but by doing. Essentially, we say knowing and not doing is really essentially the same thing as not knowing. So it says you have to do it. But don't wait for a next opportunity facilitated session. This is stuff you do every day. This is, okay, you are about to meet on a one-to-one. Think about what the purpose is of that one-to-one meeting. What's the product you want to come out of it? What are the probable issues? What is the process you want to use to bring that about? Every interaction, just think about what's your purpose, what's the product you want. You can be so more effective, so more purposeful when you're clear on purpose. Likewise, you're in a conversation with someone. Use all those questioning techniques. Ask the direct probe, ask the indirect probe, ask the redirection question, ask the leading question. Actually, using those questioning techniques, you want to be good at it so that when it's time to facilitate, they're right there at your arsenal, ready to roll. Look for those when you hear two people disagreeing, feel free to step in and use those techniques around delineation to solve a level one, asking the questions, or using the strengths and weaknesses and merge techniques to solve a level two, or suggest, sounds like this may be something we want to take to a higher level to resolve, to address a level 3. So it's use the techniques both formally and informally. Hey, you're with your child at the dinner table and saying that question, how was your day? And the kid says, fine. Use the great starting question technique to say, think about the things that happened with you today. Think about getting on the bus, the conversations you had, the things that happen at lunch and at the classes where you were saying, wow, that's really cool. You hear about what happened today that you found interesting. and watch the conversation roll because you've asked a type B starting question instead of a type A. Just use the techniques. They work.
What I hear is you start small, you test and learn, you're going to adjust and pivot. But the whole point is you have to start. And through that iterative process and approach, you're going to be able to understand what works in the most effective fashion and then how to identify what to apply when. But it's never really throwing the whole book at everything and trying it all, because that can be really overwhelming.
Very much so.
To be able to just start from the beginning and apply it even in a very small scale in whatever situation you can, you'll ultimately become more comfortable. And
absolutely.
Rote, hopefully.
It becomes what you do. And you'll even forget where you learned it because you've been doing it for so long. And that is great for a bias.
And to close, knowing what you know now, what advice would you tell your younger self?
Wow. Okay. And great question, because it's been there was no way I could not have predicted when I left college that I would be where I am today. There's no way I could have predicted. And I was willing to accept at one point the process when I got the clear message that, go forth and serve. I think it would be about be patient. Be patient. It's do what you do and be patient along the way. This is not a sprint. It's a marathon. And what needs to be revealed will be revealed. And the performance, the experiences you need to have are all preparing you for the next great experience. It's been an amazing ride. It really has been. And I am sure it's not over. We're nowhere close to done. This is just preparing me for whatever is next and looking forward to it.
And finally, what's the best way listeners can connect with you?
Thanks, Connie, for that. So our website, of course, www.leadstrat.com, it's short for leadership strategies, leadstrat, LEADSTRAT.com. Would love to hear from you. Or I'm at M. Wilkinson, MWILKINSON at leadstrat.com. Or just, if you would, Google Michael the Facilitator, and you will find me.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. Such insightful and valuable perspective on really what it takes to facilitate the most effective meetings, but really to build a collaborative relationship that leads to incredible business outcomes.
It's fantastic. It really is. Thank you, Connie. I appreciate it. Very insightful questions. You're really good at what you do. My pleasure. Love to come back at any time because you do such a great job. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
In today's complex business ecosystem, creating alignment within and among organizations can be particularly challenging with an evolving workforce composition and working structure. And with these variables, it can be difficult to come together as a single unit to effect change and move initiatives forward, but not if you use proper facilitation techniques. Facilitation can be the key to fostering better communication, knowledge sharing, and collaboration for any team, in business and beyond. It takes preparing for the environment, whether physical or virtual, setting expectations and ground rules, balancing power so everyone has a voice, and staying open to new ideas and approaches. When people can come together and set aside preconceptions, progress is realized efficiently and effectively. Thanks for listening to the Strategic Momentum Podcast, and thanks again to Michael Wilkinson for joining me. If you're attending or interested in attending the Association for Strategic Planning's 2019 annual conference, which is focused on strategy in your business ecosystem, be sure to register for Michael's masterclass, The Secrets of Facilitation, on May 15th, 2019. Visit the conference website at www.strategyassociation.org or follow the link in the show notes for this episode at flywheelassociates.com/podcast. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, leave us a review. This is what helps others find the podcast. And don't forget to follow Strategic Momentum on Facebook and Instagram. I'm Connie Steele, and you've been listening to the Strategic Momentum Podcast.